Hello, this is Prophet Newsome. Welcome to my channel. And today we're going to review a couple of videos as to see what they're talking about the current trends of the executive orders of President Trump that were signed yesterday. And so then we're going to review two videos. And after we review those two videos, I'm going to read the executive order. And then after I read the executive order, we're going to pray. So let us see what's going on here.
Today we are going to dive into reckless and wasteful spending of our federal government, particularly when it comes to foreign aid. The United States should not be the sugar daddy for the entire world, especially not for countries and organizations who act contrary to our nation's beliefs. Our country is $36 trillion in debt, yet we continue to send billions of dollars overseas, often funding projects that are not just useless, but in many cases actively harmful. Taking on a lonely journey of the federal government elected bureaucrats, instead of protecting our also funded agreement, have more important. D spent $2 million under surgeries, therapy, and gender in Guatemala. $1 million was to promote girl-centric action in Brazil. And I'd love to picture what a climate act. It's like, hey, Barbie, do you know what change is? Commitments need to be large that they think there are special arguments for girls to understand that are different than boys. $25,000 to fund a transgender opera in Colombia. Was nobody in Colombia willing to buy a ticket? USAID spent $32,000 in Peru to create a comic featuring a trans hero to address social and mental health issues. What does that have to do with diplomacy? $20,000 to fund a DEI program for a drag theater in Ecuador. $20 million was spent to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. USAID spent $6 million to promote a project boosting sustainable tourism in Egypt. I guess the U.S. is now the travel agent for the entire world since they spent $50 million on Tunisia's tourism, even though it's already one of the most visited countries in Africa. USAID gave $87.9 million to help Afghans farm, and incidentally, farm poppy, the plant from which opium is extracted. As of 2021, Afghanistan supplied 90% of the world's heroin. I thought the saying in the U.S. was just say no to drugs. How about we just say no to wasteful foreign aid? $70,000 for a live musical event to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in Ireland. State Department paid $330,000 to compile a disinformation index to blacklist conservative media outlets. USAID funneled over $54 million to EcoHealth Alliance, funding the very organization linked to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Disgraceful. $15 million was awarded to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan to distribute oral contraceptives and condoms. There's still a $3 billion fund for Afghan reconstruction that I've tried to take that money to pay for other things that the government is spending money on, and yet there's been resistance by the other side to deplete that fund and say, we're done funding things in Afghanistan. This is just the tip of the iceberg. These are taxpayer dollars being used to fund ideologically misguided, ineffective, and unnecessary projects, thanks to the blundering bureaucracy, while our own citizens struggle to put food on the table. This is not what our government was designed to do. The U.S. government is not a charity, and it should not be doling out cash to foreign organizations, some of which actively oppose the United States with no oversight. And we don't have the money to give. We're borrowing the money we send. We need to ask a simple question. Why are we borrowing money to send money overseas? Even if USAID eliminated the crazy left-wing grants for trans operas, it still makes no sense to borrow money to then turn around and send it overseas. Borrowing money to send as charity is like the worker who has no money left after paying for their food, rent, and gas, saying, oh, well, I see this homeless person, I have such great sympathy. I'll go to the bank and I'll borrow $1,000 to give to this person. That's what we are doing. We can't pay for our own, and we are borrowing the money we send overseas. That money could be used to pay down our $36 trillion debt and take care of the American people, the very people who actually pay these taxes in the first place. It's time for a real change.
So did you hear what he said? Let me get my screen back. Did you hear what he said? He found $1 trillion in waste. And he's been trying to get everyone to recognize so that they can change this policies. So let's go. We got one more video, then I'll read the executive order. See what Elon Musk is saying to the world leaders.
I was going to introduce you as tech support for the White House, but is that all you do?
I'm wearing my official uniform. Tech support.
You were probably the busiest man on earth prior to January 20th. I don't know what you call yourself now. The first is we're going to talk about DOGE, then we're going to move to AI, and then finally we're going to conclude with boring cities. Typically, people always start by saying, you know, he overpromises and he won't deliver. They finally see the trend and the trajectory, and they turn out to be supporters. Do you think we'll see that in the government efficiency space?
Well, yes. First of all, I think we've got quite a lot of support from the American public, and I think from maybe around the world. When the public is polled on sort of improving government efficiency, in fact, it is, I believe, the highest polling single issue, meaning that it is something that appeals to voters of all types. And I think improving government efficiency was like almost 70% support, so quite a lot, basically, more than any other issue. So I think the people are very supportive. Obviously, there's certain elements of the bureaucracy that are not supportive because we are moving them from the government sector to the private sector. So at a high level, this is kind of like we're moving people from low to sometimes negative productivity roles in the government sector to higher productivity roles in the private sector. And the net effect of that will be an increase in the output of useful goods and services, which increases the standard of living and well-being of the average American.
And you usually have one key target that you aim to achieve in every single endeavor that you have. So SpaceX is make humanity a multiplanetary species. With Tesla, it's usher in an era of sustainable travel. What is the one main goal for government efficiency that you have for yourself? Is it saving money? Is it doing something else? What is the one main task that you have for yourself?
Yeah, so I guess there's a few ways to describe it, but the actions end up being the same, which is like reducing the size of government and making the government much more accountable to the people, I think is going to lead to a better outcome for the people. You know, what I've said is that we really have here rule of the bureaucracy as opposed to rule of the people, democracy. So we want to restore rule of the people. And so what that means is reducing the size of the federal government, basically reducing regulation. You know, there's a tremendous amount of over-regulation that's happened over time. This is an inevitable consequence of a long period of prosperity, is that you're going to get more and more rules and regulations, more laws accumulate over time. And the normal forcing function for getting rid of rules and regulations is war. So it needs to be some kind of existential war where you have to do a reset in order to avoid being defeated in a war. This is literally throughout history has been the main forcing function for clearing out an accumulation of laws and regulation. In the absence of that, every year you get more laws and regulations until eventually everything is illegal and nothing is permitted. And that's sort of the situation we have these days. So the aspiration here is a reduction in regulation and reduction in government spending such that the economy is able to grow faster. Maybe the economy can grow at 4 or 5% potentially, in terms of real useful goods and services output. And then government spending can be reduced by about 3 or 4% of the economy, maybe $1 trillion or more. And the net effect of that would be no inflation from 2025 to 2026. So that would be quite remarkable. And also, if the US government is buying less debt, which I think will be the case, if the deficit drops from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, then there'll be 1 trillion less debt that the government needs to buy, which will drop, of course, interest rates to drop significantly. And that means people's mortgage payments, car payments, credit card payments, student loans, whatever debt they have, their debt payments will be less. So I think this is something that will benefit the average American. I think some of the things we're doing also will be hopefully helpful to other countries, because with the new administration, there's less interest in interfering with the affairs of other countries. I think a lot of the times the United States has been kind of pushy in international affairs, which may resonate with a number of members of the audience. And I think we should, in general, leave other countries to their own business. And basically, America should mind its own business rather than push for regime change all over the place. So I think this is probably a good thing for other countries too.
So instead of waiting for a war to happen, you went to war against the bureaucracy in the government.
Yes, we're essentially just with support and direction of President Trump. We are reducing the size of the bureaucracy, getting rid of excess regulatory regulations. And there's also so many agencies and regulatory authorities that they actually step on each other's feet. It's kind of like having a sports game where there are too many referees on the field, like more referees than players at times. Now that would be a silly game if the players can't pass the ball without hitting a referee. But it's kind of getting to that point in the US. So there's roughly 450 federal agencies of one kind or another. That's more agencies. That's almost an average of 2 agencies per year since the formation of the United States. So, I mean, how many agencies do you really need to run a country? Not 450, that's for sure.
And how do you guarantee that all the incredible achievements that you aim to have in terms of savings, in terms of impacting the lives of the American people, are not going to be reversed in 4 years? Typically, the cycle gets reversed every 4 years. Do you think it's going to be so impactful that it won't be reversed? Is there any ways that you can ensure that the progress is going to be continuous?
Well, I think we do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like leaving a weed. If you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder. So we have to really delete entire agencies, many of them. Bureaucracy in some new administration, but it'll be from a much lower baseline. So it's a step in the right direction. I think the overarching goal here is to lay the foundation for prosperity that will last many decades, maybe centuries. Nothing's forever, but I think we can strengthen the foundations of the United States substantially.
And what lessons can other governments learn from the US? You say tech support on your shirt. Is that only technology, or is there other things? How do you approach efficiency?
Well, a shocking percentage of the problem, well, maybe it's not shocking for those who know it, but a big percentage of the problem is improving the technology that the government runs on. So the US government runs on a collection of thousands of computers, many of them antiquated, running very old software, and the computers don't talk to each other. In order to make the government more efficient, you have to improve the technology. You may have read about the example I used recently when President Trump was signing one of the DOGE executive orders of the difficulty of U.S. government workers retiring. Like the maximum retirement rate is $10,000 a month. And the reason for that is because the retirement is entirely paperwork right now. It's manually calculated paperwork that's put in an envelope and then taken down a mine shaft and stored in a mine. And then one of the things that affects the rate at which federal workers can retire is the speed of the elevator in a mine in Pennsylvania, which is bizarre because it should be digital, So then when we said, well, why isn't it digital? They said, well, we have had a digitization program going since 2014. So then we asked, well, so how much progress have you made? And they said, B. You mean you're giving yourself a grade of B? No, we're on the letter B. So we're like, okay, we're going to need to really provide some tech support here. Otherwise, literally, people can't even retire, like even if they want to. It's pretty bad. There's a lot of software systems that need to be updated and fixed, in some cases deleted. A lot of things that should be automated. I mean, in terms of the number of, say, U.S. citizens that are operating the mine, it's about 1,000 people are working on this mine. They should be working on producing goods and services that are of much higher value to the public, to the. So, I mean, really, even if somebody just grew tomatoes in their garden and sold them at the farmer's market, that would be more useful than carrying manila envelopes down a mine shaft, safe to say. A lot of the stuff is like that. It's not like any one thing is particularly difficult, but there are 10,000 things that need to be improved.
So it's efficiency through innovation rather than efficiency through austerity and cost cutting specifically, right? So you're trying to do both at the same time, maybe focus more on tech support than cutting costs?
Well, by improving the technology, the costs do reduce. So, it's very expensive to have 1,000 people operate a mine with doing pay for retirement, whereas that really should just be digitized and be a computer that's with the information stored in the cloud. And it's very straightforward and low cost. So automation, will help there a lot. And then, but like a lot of things just really shouldn't exist. They're kind of vestigial. A lot of attention has been on the sort of USAID, for example. When we looked at a lot of those programs, we're like, we should look, why does this actually exist? Is there really a need for it? There's like National Endowment for Democracy, but I'm like, okay, well, how much democracy have they achieved lately? I don't know, not much. So, the picture they have on their website is a picture of Reagan and Gorbachev. That's been a while. That was like the 80s. So I'm obviously not opposed to democracy, or there's all these things that get funded, but we're like, why does this need taxpayer money? I don't think, it doesn't seem like it does. There's a lot of sort of pushing DEI worldwide. This obviously the Trump administration doesn't agree with, and we want to terminate that stuff, which we are. And make sure the schools focus on improving basic education of kids. As President Trump said, I think yesterday, maybe today, the United States is currently ranked 40th out of 40 in the OECD for education, which is pretty bad. But in terms of spending, the United States is spending a tremendous amount per student, but achieving very weak results. So, that's just a case where, okay, we need to spend less money and get better results. It's like a big company, like a big corporation, American Incorporated. And, just like with Twitter, there was a lot of stuff that was being done that was unnecessary. In the case of Twitter, we reduced the staff by 80%, but at the same time improved the functionality and capabilities of the site dramatically and accomplished more in a year than they previously accomplished in 5 years. So it's like a corporate turnaround, but at a much larger scale. And we're giving generous exit packages. If people retire, they get paid all the way through September. They can go on vacation, get a second job, do whatever they want. We can't actually pay them any more than through September because the congressional appropriation is only through the end of the government financial year, which ends in September. So I think there'll be some disruption, but at the end of the day, we'll have people move from, like I said, from low to negative productivity roles in the government sector to higher productivity roles in the private sector.
Can we pivot to artificial intelligence? And I'm sure you've been seeing what DeepSeek has done and all the claimed achievements that they've had. I know that we've been speaking for a while about Grok 3 and that Grok 3 is going to be a true disruptor in the AI space. When are we going to see that? And what capabilities can we expect from Grok 3?
Well, Grok 3.
Okay, one more.
We'll push that along for you right here. We'll have President Trump and Elon Musk inside of the Oval Office. So what I'll do is just sort of dance around right now, wait for them to play this out. Obviously, highly important here to take President Trump and Elon Musk. So much has been talked about, and we've been seeing today, even in the past week, as well as many Democrats are really holding these rallies against Elon Musk and members of DOGE as they worry that DOGE is going to be gutting a lot of the federal resources in this country. We also know from Edward Lawrence, Fox News, saying Fox confirms President Trump is expected to sign an executive order today directing agencies to work with the Department of Government Efficiency to cut staff. All right, here we go. We got it now. Tape playback is rolling, and so are we. In 3, 2, 1, let's go for it.
Nice meeting you here. Come here often?
X, are you okay? This is X, and he's a great guy, high IQ. He's a high IQ individual.
And he's got this, check out this cool chain he's got.
So thank you very much. We had a busy day today. The king just left, and we've had a great discussion, terrific discussion concerning Gaza and everything else. We had discussions also about Saturday at 12 o'clock. It's going to be a big moment. We'll see what happens. I don't expect much happening with these people, but we'll see what happens. And we're going to be signing a very important deal today. It's DOGE, and I'm going to ask Elon to tell you a little bit about it and some of the things that we found, which are shocking. Billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I say we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt. And it's
once you try a comfort hood, slightly weighted, super oversized, it's that perfect fit that makes.
And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption. And it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's very serious. I think it's a very serious violation. I'll ask Elon Musk to say a few words, and we'll take some questions. Elon, go ahead.
Sure. So at a high level, if you say what is the goal of DOGE, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, FAX, we would have to, if you sorry. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, or if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there aren't some good. There are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at this, if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking, because we spend a lot of money on defense, But and if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right,
etc.?
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at, if you look at, say, Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization, so then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's...
Okay, everyone. Let us pull up the executive order and read it. Just a moment here. Did you hear what they were saying? So much waste. Okay, let's read this presidential action. Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Workforce Optimization Initiative. The executive order signed February the 11th, 2025, by the authority invested in me as the President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, the purpose, to restore accountability to the American public. This order commenced a critical transformation of the federal bureaucracy by eliminating waste, bloat, and ancillary. My administration will empower American families, workers, taxpayers, and our system of government itself. Section 2, definition A, agency, has the meaning given to it in Section 3502 of Title 44 United States Code, except that such term does not include the executive office of the president or any components thereof. B, agency head means the highest rank official of the agency, which as the secretary, administrator, chairman, or director, unless otherwise specified in this order. C, DOGE Team Leads means the leader of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, team at each agency, defined as defined in the Executive Order 14158 of January 20th, 2025, establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. D, employees, has the meaning given to it by Section 2105 of Title V, the United States Codes, and includes individuals who serve the executive branch and who qualify as employees under the section for any purpose. E, immigration enforcement means the investigation, enforcement, or assisting in the investigation of enforcement of federal immigration laws, including with respect to the federal immigration laws that penalize a person's presence in, entry, or re-entry to or employment in the United States, but does not include assisting individuals in applying for immigration benefits or efforts to prevent enforcement of immigration law or to prevent deportation or removal from the United States. F, law enforcement means 1, engagement in or supervision of the prevention, detection, and investigation or persecution of or the incarceration of any person for any violation of law. Or 2, the protection of federal, state, local, and foreign government officials against threats to personal safety. G, temporary employees, has the meaning given to it by 5 CFR Part 316. H, reemployment annuitant, has the meaning given to it in 5 CFR Part 837. Section 3, reforming the federal workforce to maximize efficiency and productivity. A, higher ratio. Pursuant to the presidential memorandum in January 20th, 2025, hiring freeze, the director of the Office of Management and Budget shall submit a plan to reduce the size of the federal government workforce through efficiency improvements and attribute plan. The plan shall require that each agency hire no more than 1 employee for every 4 employees that department, consistent with the plan and any applicable exemptions, details provided for the plan. This order does not affect the standard freeze on hiring as applied to the Internal Revenue Services. This ratio, shall not apply to functions related to the public safety, immigration enforcement, or law enforcement. Agencies' heads shall also adhere to the federal hiring plan that will be promulgated pursuant to this Executive Order 14170 of January 20th, 2025, reforming the federal hiring process and restoring merit to government service. B, hire approval. Each agency head shall develop a data-driven plan in consultation with DOGE Team Leads to ensure new career appointment hires are in the highest need areas. This hiring plan shall include that new career appointment hiring decisions shall be made in consultation with the agency DOGE team lead consistent with applicable law. Secondly, the agency shall not fill any vacancy for career appointments that DOGE team lead assesses should not be filled unless the agency has determined the position should be filled. Each DOGE team lead shall provide the United States DOGE Service USDS administrator with the monthly hiring report for the agency. C, reduction of in-force. Agency head shall promptly undertake preparations. Okay, let's read C again. Reduction in force. Agency heads shall promptly undertake preparations to initiate large-scale reduction in force, which is RIF, consistent with appropriate laws, and to separate from federal services temporary employees or employee annuitants working in areas that will likely be subject to the RIFs. All offices that perform functions not mandated by statute or law shall be prioritized in the RIF, including all agencies, diversity, equality, inclusion, and initiatives, all agency initiative components or operations that my administration suspends or closes, and all components and employees performing functions not mandated by statute or by law who are not typically designated as essential during a lapse in appropriations as provided in the agency's contingency plan on the Office of Management and Budget website. This subsection shall not apply to functions related to public safety, immigration, enforcement, and law enforcement. D, rule making. Within 30 days of the date of this order, the Director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, shall initiate a rulemaking that proposes to revise 5 CFR 731.202B to include additional substantial suitability criteria, including 1, failure to comply with generally acceptable legal obligations, including timing, filing of tax returns. 2, failure to comply with any provision that would preclude regular federal services, including citizenship requirements. 3, refusal to certify compliance with any applicable non-disclosure obligations consistent with 5 U.S.C. 2302B13. And failure to adhere to those compliances obligations in the course of the federal employment. And 4, theft or misuse of government resources and equipment or neglect loss and material government resources and equipment. E, developing agencies reorganizing plan within 30 days of the date of this order. Agency heads shall submit to the Director of the Office of Management and Budget a report that identifies any statute that establishes the agency or subcomponents of the agency by statutory requirements and titles. The report shall discuss whether the agency or any of its subcomponents should be eliminated or consolidated. F, within 240 days of this date of this order, the USDS administrator shall submit a report to the president regarding the implementations of this order, including a recommendation as to whether any of its provisions should be extended, modified, or terminated. 4, exclusions. This order does not apply to the military personnel. B, agency heads may exempt from this order any position they deem necessary to meet national security, homeland security, and public safety responsibilities. C, the director of OPM may grant exemptions for this order where those exemptions are otherwise necessary and shall assist in promoting workforce reduction. Section 5. General provisions. A, nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect 1, the authority granted by law to an executive department, agency, or the head thereof, or 2, the functions of the director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, and legislative proposals. B, the order shall be implemented consistent with the applicable law, subject to the availability of appropriations. C, this order shall not extend to, does not create any right or benefit substantive or procedural, enforceable at law, or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, the officers, employees, and agents of any other person. White House, February 11, 2025. So basically, everyone, the DOGE initiative, the key factors and provision. Let's talk about what the implementation date is, will be February 11, 2025. The primary goal is to transform federal and bureaucracies by eliminating waste and efficiency. Now, we saw the video where they were spending millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and tens of thousands of dollars on unnecessary things that's not beneficial. And as we've said in a couple of videos ago, they had contracts that they were being paid uh, for work they wasn't doing. Uh, there was just a lot of waste that's going on that they're investigating, they're discovering. So the primary goal is for them to eliminate waste and efficiency. The major components is workforce reduction measures. They're going to reduce the staff of the American government. 1.4 hiring ratio, in which they're going to do one. They're going to hire one person, one manager every 4 persons. Okay. Mandatory preparation, a large scale of reduction of force, which is the RIFs. Then they're eliminating non-statutory mandated offices. So therefore, anything that's not mandatory or mandated by law, they're going to be eliminating all those positions. And Elon talked about there were so many. He said over 400 different organizations within the government. They're going to be eliminating a whole lot of those that's repetitive, that's doing the same thing, that's running cross with other organizations that's doing the identical things that they were doing. They're going to eliminate that. Priority targeting the DEA's initiative and non-essential functions. Oversight management, creation of DOGE team leads for each agency, Monthly hiring reports would be required. They're going to, and then they have to they do a report, but then they have to go through the DOGE people in order to make sure they can hire additional staff because they don't want to add more people. They want to reduce the people down, but they don't want to overpopulate employment like they've done before. They got a 240-day implementation revisal of law and requirements. Then they have new stability criteria for federal employees. The benefits for American is the uh, facial impact, reduce government spending through workforce organizations, potential tax savings from decreased operational costs. What they're alleging is when they get rid of all these other companies, what they're spending all this money on is going to benefit the American people, and it will affect our taxes, and also our mortgages and things of that nature. Government efficiency, enhance accountability measures, and that's very needed because, as he said in the other video, that there's like no accountability. They had people on the do not fund list, and it take a year to create. They create this loophole that it takes a year to get on the list, and then after the people are on the list, there's nobody regulating the people on the list, and they're still getting money even though their name is not on the list. So definitely, they need someone to be accountable for all of the funding and all the organizations that's implemented, that's responsible for giving out these funds. Focus resource allocation. They're going to make sure the money going to the right people and not overly so much money. He said, remember, President Trump said there was one woman got over $30 million. The funding went to her. So all that's unnecessary spending, and hopefully they're going to be prosecuting. I think that there are going to be a whole lot of people that's going to be prosecuted for mismanagement and having uh, created some of these organizations because the other day they said that they had organizations that only exist in paper. They wasn't even real organizations, and they were funding these organizations. Then in the Social Security, they found people that was 150 years old, not one or two, but so many, over 50 something people uh, that were receiving Social Security benefits, and they're over 150 years old. And Elon Musk said they weren't even in the Guinness Book of World Records. So we do need oversight, someone to look over and allocate the funds, make sure the right amount of funds for the right people would be given to the right person. Streamline agency operations. They need to know what the agencies are operating, how they're functioning, what they're doing, how they've been organized, and then definitely how they're getting funding. Merit-based hiring improvements. So eliminate he eliminated that you can just be only a lesbian to have that be your only requirement to get a job for the government. You be a lesbian, or you have some similarities, or you just a black person, or not based on your educational experience, your work experiences, or your uh, qualifications, basically. So they're eliminated, and everybody that's going to get a job, therefore, will be based on your individual merit. And so that's not a bad thing, seeing that so many people are overqualified because they've prepared to work these jobs, to let them get those jobs. Like they were talking about the aviation thing on the other video, that they were putting people in the place that were handicapped, and they removed people that were qualified out of those jobs and put people in there because they were handicapped or because they were lesbian or gay. That should not be. So this order will bring back merit-based people that's qualified to do a job to work in those organizations. Okay. Then the next thing, public service protection, exemptions for criteria service, public safety, and law enforcement. They're going to have law exemptions for that. National security exemption, considerations maintained. Enhance employee accountability standards. Notable facts. Okay. Notable facts. The major federal workforce reduction initiative for 2025, according to the executive order, this initiative represents the first comprehensive federal workforce reduction program implemented since 2025. The order establishes the Departments of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, initiative with specific measures, including a 1-to-4 hiring mandate, which those things we said above. Then we have introduce initiatives for DOGE, branding the effective efficiency of the program. DOGE, which is the Department of Government Efficiency, branding represents an initiative approach to the federal reform initiatives by creating a memorial acronym that reflects the program to focus on streamlining government operations. This branding strategy helps to communicate the initiative core mission to optimize workforce efficiency, reducing bureaucracy's waste. So these things are what we have in this executive order. And let's have a word of prayer. Father, we ask that you would, the main thing, bring our nation on the same page, one mind, one understanding of what this is going to do to prevent waste. Bind the spirit that does not want this waste to be investigated. Uncover everything that they want hidden, so that they can find where this money has been going and who's been getting this money uh, from the American taxpayers. So we ask you, Father, don't allow anything to stop them from getting this stuff done, uncovering the waste and putting funds that's going to benefit the American people right in the right places. So we bless our president. We bless Elon Musk and all his staff. We bless everyone, Father. And we bless all those that's of misunderstanding, that's at war for whatever the war, whatever the reason it are. We ask you, Father, to give the senators and congressmen to be on the same page, to have clarity and respect and integrity, to want to find out what's going on with all this money and why this money has been leaving this country, going to other countries, into other pockets that are not legitimate, that are not that are not feasible or respectable to the interests of the American people. Uh, we ask you, Father, bind this bit of perversion that's sending money to all these perverted things, all this ungodly stuff. They sending them taxpayer money for things that taxpayers over 50 or 75% may not even believe in, like the getting sex change operations for children and understanding gender things in other countries, when that stuff could not even be true, because some of those people don't even have none of that stuff going on in their countries. They don't believe in none of that stuff. And so we ask you, Father, to expose everything that needs to be exposed, uncover everything that's hidden, bring everything to the light that's in the dark, so that this stuff so that there will be reform. Bring forth reform in the finances of this country, in the debt of this country. Release this country from debt and let this plan that President Trump has release this country from the $3 trillion debt that they have, that they can't even afford to pay to other countries. So we ask you, Father, to let this be the plan that bring forth resources back to the country as he began to open up the steel mills and open up the other factories, Father, and bring jobs back to this country to rebuild where this country has fell in and been destroyed by sending all of the jobs and all the resources to other countries. We touch and agree with the Spirit to bring the resources back so that this country can begin to thrive and stand on its own 2 feet without being reliant upon other countries that's not doing right by our country. So in your name we pray, Father, and we ask you to bless all involved. Before we go today, let me begin also to remind you of my book, Trump 365-Day Prayer Journal, is going to be available on Amazon, possibly early next week. I'm still working on corrections to get it up and running. But you can go to Amazon and get this book, Trump 365-Day Prayer Journal. Remember, we're praying for our country. We're praying for our leaders, and specifically, we're praying for our president. So we thank you all, and you all have a blessed day. This is Prophet Newsome, and this has been Prayer Nation.